Urged forward by the stimulus of new inventions and modernism, the beginning of the century witnessed the birth of many companies that produced what came to be called motorcycles. Italy, too, was affected by this phenomenon, and it was precisely during those years that the first companies sprang up, with names destined to conquer the world. A wealthy widow had 6 sons: Giuseppe, Giovanni, Francesco, Filippo, Domenico, and Tonino. A tiny workshop was set up in Pesaro, following the sale of some lands. This was the beginning of Benelli in the spring of 1911. The eldest brothers, Giuseppe and Giovanni, having completed their schooling, worked here with the help of some hired laborers. When the Great War broke out, the newly formed factory's activities slowed down, but this was also the period in which the first project was developed for a single-cylinder, 2-speed engine of only 75 cc, applied to the fork of a bicycle. But it was not until after the war that the first real motorcycles were built. These were a lightweight engine of 98 cc and 2 more of 125 and 147 cc, all with 2 gears and final chain transmission. As time passed, the youngest of the widow Benelli's sons grew up and developed a passion for competition. Antonio, known to everyone as Tonino, embarked on a rapidly rising career as an athlete, winning the most important national circuits. In 1927, Giuseppe, the eldest of the brothers, built a 4-speed engine of 175 cc with overhead camshaft, driven by a revolutionary system for that time, an L-shaped train placed in a light alloy carter on the right of the cylinder. This futuristic engine led to versions both for the road and for competition. It was with one of these models that Tonino Benelli won the first Italian title in 1927 for his family's firm, which he repeated in 28, 30 and 31. In 1934, the elimination of tax relief for this horsepower class ruined the market for road motorcycles and also marked the end of competitions in this category. Benelli was especially badly hit, but quickly adapted its production. The Pesaro-based company first built a 500, then a 250, which were practically identical. Both had a cylinder slightly inclined to the front and a single gear shaft distribution. They were produced in 3 versions: Road, Sport and Super Sport. The latter model was adapted to the demands of racing. The 250 made a stunning debut. Raffaele Alberti rode a particularly well-made model to win the world record for the flying kilometer. In 1937, the adoption of elastic rear suspension made the 250 much more manageable. In the Grand Prize of Nations that year, the first 3 places were won by Soprani, Rossetti and Martelli, all riding Benellis. At that point, Benelli's fame was becoming international, and the first cautious steps were taken toward what in those days was the most difficult and thrilling road circuit, the Tourist Trophy. In order to win the treacherous circuit on the Isle of Man, Benelli decided in 1939 to hire an English driver, Ted Mellors, a great racing specialist. Mellors didn't disappoint and won a glorious victory in the lightweight TT category over the supercharged German DKVs that dominated the competition in that period. Then came the war, and with it, destruction. The Benelli factory was stripped completely bare, from supplies to warehouses to utensil machines, and even the buildings were damaged. Following the war, the Benelli brothers attempted to revive the company, starting by transforming approximately 1,000 military motorcycles for civilian use. At the end of 1948, Giuseppe Benelli made a partial split from his brothers and founded Motobi. For some years, it supported Benelli production and was absorbed by the parent company in the early 1960s. In 1949, the engine of the 250 twin shaft was completely redesigned, and the following year, thanks to Ambrosini's prowess at the Tourist Trophy and the Grand Prize of Nations, finally won the coveted world title for the 250.
Il giro più veloce viene da lui compiuto alla vertiginosa media oraria di oltre 150 km. La media complessiva si avvia a superare i 145. Mentre il vincitore conclude la sua galoppata formidabile, esultano i fratelli Benelli, geniali costruttori della macchina imbattibile, e Ambrosini, campione del mondo, già sogna le vittorie di domani.
To conquer new areas of the market, Benelli first produced a 98cc model named for Giovanni's daughter, Letizia, followed by the 125 two-speed called the Leoncino. Following the Benelli tradition, the Leoncino was also used in competition with a rapid succession of victories. Among the most important were 3 victories for the touring bike and 2 for the legendary Milano-Taranto course, covered in a single day on the roads of that period and feverishly followed by the public, much like the 1,000-mile auto race. A 4-speed version of the Leoncino was called Osso di prosciutto, or ham bone, and featured single-shaft distribution with gear shift. In 1951, Ambrosini's legend was shattered in the trial runs for the Grand Prix of France on the Albi circuit, when the driver was killed in an accident. Benelli withdrew from competition for a few years, but racing remained in the company's heart, and it re-entered the field in the late 1950s, when the legendary Mike Halewood rode a Benelli in the Tourist Trophy. Beginning in 1960, the series of 4-cylinder competition motorcycles was introduced, first in 250 and 350 versions, followed by the 500cc model. The company's epic fame returned, pitting Benellis, driven by Provini and Grassetti, against crack adversaries with names like MV Augusta, MZ, and many others. Tarquinio Provini won the Italian title 2 years running, in 1965 and 1966. But the time had come for a meek-looking young man with glasses, who was transformed into a champion without peer the moment he mounted a motorcycle. His name was Renzo Pasolini.
Però non è che io corro esclusivamente per vincere, io corro per correre. Dopo se vinco tanto meglio.
These years marked the duels between Pasolini and Agostini in the city circuits of Romagna, all along the streets and coast roads of Pesaro, Riccione, Cattolica, Cesenatico, Rimini and Milano Marittima. They were cheered on by enthusiastic crowds of supporters. In 1969, Benelli entered the World Cup with Pasolini and the Australian Ken Carruthers. But the season was not propitious for the Italian. After winning the Italian title for the 250 and 350, he had an accident, leaving the way clear for his teammate, who brought home the world title to Pesaro after 19 years. At the end of 1972, the Finnish champion, Jarno Saarinen, was called to drive the 500 4-cylinder in an unforgettable duel with Agostini, with Pasolini driving for Aermacchi. But after the tragic accident in Monza that killed Pasolini and Saarinen, Benelli withdrew from competition, closing a chapter that had lasted over 50 years.